Hello everyone, once again welcome to my channel. This evening I will be sharing you some of my answers according to the given questions, and it is all about the Bangladeshi English presented in the material. But before that, let me share to you that this chapter will going to examine the social linguistic reality of English in Bangladesh from the perspective of world English. So now let's start. But before that, let me read the first question. Okay? So the first question is, how English arrived in Bangladesh? Discuss based on the three phases presented in the material. So according to the history of English in Bangladesh, so the English in Bangladesh can be divided into three main phases of the political history of the nation. So reflecting this, the changing rule and the status of English. The first one is during the during the colonial rule in 1757 to 1947. So it is where the origin of English in the Indian subcontinent, which is linked to British colonial. So it is where the first encounters between the Indians and the British date from the 1630s. So when English trading factories were set up in Bengal, Bengal is located in Bangladesh. Initially, English was a language of trade between English factors and local go-betweens. So with no commercial or institutional opportunities for its life. So the scope of learning English was widened in the next century with the establishment of English schools, initially for European children and later for locals with the aim of spreading. So that's where they started. And the second one is during the Pakistan era. And that is during 1947 until 1971. So it is where constructing a new national language, which is the Urdu. Urdu was from Indian, right? So to unite linguistically, culturally, and geographically. So it is divided from East and West, which is Pakistan, called for significant political investment. So the question of English apparently remained in the background to this complex political process. So English gained a new status in the Federation of Pakistan, serving as a neutral political tool for communication between the two wings of Pakistan. So it is a tool for communication, and it is very important. So in order to communicate with the other country, you can use a language, right? So according to this, the dominance of English was inherited from colonial rule, continued in education, which also maintained social division along linguistic lines. So it is now applied in education. And lastly, for my answer, English came under policy favor. So arguably, owing to the influence of globalization. So it is also the influence from the globalization and privatization of education. So it is not only focuses there from the Pakistani and Indian. It also because of the globalization and the privatization of education. So since the scope for developing proficiency in English in the national curriculum is restricted by national education policies, a private English education market was set up to cater to the needs and aspirations of the wealthier class. So therefore, the public sector started revamping its language policies, and according to the greater prominence to English, So the latest national education policy, which is the Ministry of Education in 2010, and the National Curriculum for English, or the National Curriculum Textbook Board. So it is where the national the English is a big V. So now let's move on to the next question. And the next question is, what is the status of English in terms of education and language policies in Bangladesh? So here's my answer. I write it in here. The current status of English in Bangladesh is not a simple task. It is mainly because of the absence of status planning. So they has no status planning for English. So in terms of English applying in the whole society, the National Education Policy, or the Ministry of Education during 2010, it includes chapters on all conceivable forms of education. So including the adult and non-formal education, women's education, religious and moral education, physical education, and legal education. But no chapters is dedicated to languages or language education. So by this, they are introducing the English, since this policies should be applied in different factors, right? So the status of Bangla is determined unambiguously by policy. So in order to help to understand the place of English. So for example, the Bangla in education, so the Bangla Language Introduction Act. So it is a policy. So it is called the Bangla Language Introduction Act of 1987. So it is a policy which obliges courts, the government offices, semi-government, and autonomous institutions were except in foreign relations to use Bangla. So they should use Bangla. That's the current status of English in Bangladesh. So literally, they're more on their native language. So now let's move on to the third question, which is describe the functions of English in terms of education, politics, NGOs and non-government organizations, creative writing, electronic communication. First, I will share the answer about the English in Bangladesh in terms of education. So in Bangladesh, education is a key domain where English has an overarching presence. So both as a language for learning and as a language in which students are expected to develop functional proficiency. So the curricular status of English varies across the streams of education in the Bangladesh. So the English there is taught during as a compulsory subject during the from grade 1 until grade 12. So the language enjoys the same curricular space and instructional time as Bangla. So that's the key point there in English in education. Now let's move on to the politics. So the Bangla, so in the language of politics and political expression in Bangladesh, so using a language other than Bangla in this field, so Bangla is their language in Bangladesh, so they call it Bangla. So in this field can be considered politically incorrect. So if you're in there using a language other than Bangla in this field of politics can be considered politically incorrect. so with serious repercussions. Why is it so? Although the major political parties, including the Bangladesh Awami League or BAL, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party or BNP, the Bangladesh Jatiya Party or BJP, and the Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami or BGI, maintained their official websites in English and Bangla. So, in there, the all major political parties today try to influence popular opinions by direct contact with people through political meetings and campaigns, protests, rallies, and other forms of mass gatherings where Bangla is used as the only language of communication. So, by this, it is similarly in what are known as talk shows. So, discussions of politics and political affairs, so by academics, so public intellectuals and political commentators on all televisions channels is carried out in Bangla. So every channel you've seen there in Bangladesh, their what they use, the language they use is the Bangla, so their language, right? So now let's move on to the NGOs, or the non-government organizations. So the English probably has the strongest presence. So in politics, they only use the Bangla, which is their language in Bangladesh. But in in non-government organizations, the English probably has the strongest presence in non-government organizations or the NGOs. So by this, the NGO Affairs Bureau, the government department of overseeing NGO operation in Bangladesh, listed over 2,600 such organizations as of November 2018. So they has lots of organizations. So by this, the various reports and other forms of documentation, many NGOs are involved in conducting and sponsoring research in the fields of specialization. So, and the findings are published mainly in English. So their findings were English. So as you have observed there, the English is the strongest presence in non-government organizations. So which is often translation into Bangla. It is also been translated English and translated into Bangla. So to facilitate understanding of their content among local people. So they also have these translations. And also let's move on to the creative writing. So although creative writing in English in the region dates back to the early 19th century, Bangladeshi writing in English, or BWE, has yet to receive notable recognition. So, Bangladeshi writing in English, in this respect, lags behind its Indian, Pakistan, and Sri Lankan counterparts, which claim literary history books and have received considerable critical attention. So, by this, in creative writing, so in post-independence Bangladesh, even though writers including Raza Khan, from the year 1936 to 2011, so they wrote this during 1980s. So the Bangladeshi writing in English remains somewhat inchoate. So by this, the so by this so I think that's it about the creative writing. So now let's move on to the last part, which is electronic communication. So this is very important because from email communication in Bangladesh is characterized by the use of English. So the email should be using English language. So, and also in the public sector, email is not the official form of communication, even though it probably constitutes the dominant form of communication in the private sector. So also in mobile phone based short message service or SMS, so short message service constitutes another area of significant English use in Bangladesh. As elsewhere in South Asia, so while emails are written mainly in English, the SMS mixes Bangla and English. So the short message service has both the English and Bangla, but in email it only has the English as the language. So also in Facebook posts and messages, Bangladesh reflect creative and agentic use of language. They also use the language there. So although this domain like email and SMS is yet to be explored from WE perspective, more recently, so WhatsApp has become more popular than SMS. So SMS was not famous, not 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 very common in there. So the famous app that they usually use right now is the WhatsApp, so which has entitled an even wider use of English. So I think that's it for the answer for the question number 3. So now let's move on to the last part of the question, which is what is the code mixing and code switching and technology mediated innovations in Bangladesh? So we have here the code mixing, code switching, and technology mediated innovations in Bangladesh. So as the following SMS tags illustrate, so it established business in Bangladesh blended English and Bangla to varying degrees to inform existing customers about products and services. So to introduce their products, so they mix the English and Bangla language. So in terms of code mixing or code switching, so communication technology also facilitates linguistic innovations other than linguistic transgression. So for example, here's an example. So the family and friend, or the big F, small n, then big F again. So that is family and friend. It's a familiar word in the mobile phone culture in Bangladesh. So they also have this when they texting someone, so they also have this short messages, just like this F and F. So family and friend. So just like in Philippines. Sorry, late reply, SLR, something like that. So they has that. So and also the middle word in each of these web addresses is Bangla. So in references of the searched materials are usually web addresses in Bangla language. So the code mixing and linguistic transpirations are also found in the urban linguistic landscape. So particularly in signs and billboards. So you can see there. So a few examples noted in Dhaka include lam ye furniture. So it is written in English, in which the first two words are two letters from the Arabic alphabet. So the lam ye, and the furniture is in English, right? So and also the Akashbari holidays. So it is written in both Bangla and English. So from the word Akashbari, then holidays. Akashbari is a Bangla word and the holidays is an English word. So they use both Bangla and English. So in which the first word is Bangla. So there are lots of code mixing. So the code mixing is most obvious in the nomenclature of major political parties in Bangladesh. So there's a lot. So it seems same, almost the same. I mean, not almost, maybe the same with the Philippines, right? I think that's it for my answer. So I will end my answer right now. So thank you for listening, everyone. Bye.